My name's Kelsey. I'm 5'3", a mediocre yogi, and have only met one person paler than me. All of that rhymed, and it was only 3/4 intentional. I live with dissociation and C-PTSD, so I often hide behind weighted blankets and free-form poetry. I like driving without a destination and meeting new dogs, though I prefer cats in my home. I think this is because my childhood was nomadic with a bark that wouldn't quit. I will share more on the mic than my family would like, but helping others feel understood is what brought me to the stage. I like my coffee black and my bookshelves full. I'm oddly good at eating sloppy joes without being sloppy, probably from training myself to keep my messes hidden. I don't know a lot, but I know every line to Gilmore Girls, and that I have survived 100% of my worst days. I know that poetry is my ultimate metaphor as I choose which lines to break, which rhymes to make while I write my life into its own rhythm. Because I was a young girl in Chucks fighting sandpaper days and turning scrapes into poetry. And I know that all of this has made me who I am here tonight. A young woman building marble years, a poetry career, and still wearing Chucks, even though I'm not right now. Thank you. Thank you. That is how I like to say hi and introduce myself without actually introducing myself. That was my honest poem after Rudy Francisco. But yes, my name is Kelsey Bigelow. I am a poet here in Des Moines, and I am honored to be the coach for our wonderful storytellers. You guys are doing great. And I am also honored to have space to share my own story with you tonight. So as you heard in that opening poem, I have C-PTSD and dissociation, among other things. C-PTSD is known as complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and which, according to the C-PTSD Foundation, is the result of ongoing, inescapable relational trauma, especially during critical brain development ages. Instead of giving my full backstory, because that belongs in a feature-length film, the overview is that my childhood was rooted in a broken home. Amidst a brutal custody battle, I lived in unstable homes. My family moved a lot. My childhood saw a lot of substance abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal and emotional abuse, neglect, suicide attempts, health issues, and so much more. And being exposed to these kinds of traumas for my entire upbringing meant I dissolved myself into exactly who everyone needed me to be. I had no sense of self and no agency. I've since learned more about C-PTSD and the many symptoms that survivors can have with it. I'm going to put a finger up for every single one that I have from this list. According to the C-PTSD Foundation, people with C-PTSD can experience amnesia, alienation, chronic mistrust, chronic physical pain, re-victimization, debilitating flashbacks, nightmares, body memories, anxiety, dissociation, trouble regulating volatile emotions, severe depression, toxic shame, autoimmune diseases, along with other deeply distressing and possibly life-altering symptoms. The one symptom from this list I'm going to focus on tonight is my dissociation. There are many kinds of dissociation, but the one I have involves separating myself from my emotions, which this light is a really good metaphor for. And I spent so much of my childhood and my teenage years dissociating to numb away from the hurt, to protect myself. This became a skill I learned to intentionally turn on in my adult years, which can be handy when I'm trying to protect myself, but numbing away has also meant I missed out on a lot of joy. So I've spent the last couple of years putting in the work so that I can now recognize the signs for when I am about to dissociate so that I can train myself to stay present. And that hopefully that means I will eventually have as full of a human experience as possible. And while I've gotten good at staying present, my mind will still dissociate against my will. And this, combined with my PTSD, makes my professional and personal lives very challenging. I worked regular 9-to-5 jobs for nearly a decade, and my C-PTSD caused me to be an overachiever out of the instilled fear that I am not inherently good enough, or that I won't be loved or accepted or even noticed if I'm not achieving thing after thing after thing. This has caused me to overwork myself to the point of extreme burnout, which then triggers my dissociation because of how overwhelmed I get. I became most aware of my dissociation in my last 9-to-5, though I still see it in my work now. When I get overwhelmed by my workload and navigating challenging working relationships, I end up dissociating. And what this looks like is forgetting entire meetings because my brain left, or unintentionally leaving my mind while I'm trying to get to know someone new, or having a blank mind and not being able to focus on my work. This causes a lot of misunderstandings, delays in my work, generally more stress all around, and so many more problems. But again, I've been training myself to stay present. As a performer, I've seen my dissociation show up at the worst possible times, like when I'm on stage. And I forget where I'm at in a poem, my brain will leave me, and I am frozen at the mic. To the audience, this looks like I'm trying to find the next word in the poem, the next line. But really, I am actively trying to stay present in the moment to get back and finish the poem. Now, personally, my C-PTSD and my dissociation have made quite the mark on my relationships. Again, I won't go into all of them because we'd be here forever and this would be therapy, but one way I've seen the two working together is creating a unique attachment style. My C-PTSD has caused me to be desperate for someone to love me, someone to stay. And in my past relationships, this meant I was taking full responsibility for my partner's thoughts, actions, and emotions, to the point of sacrificing my own needs and wants in the hopes that they would just love me and stay. However, my dissociation has instilled a distrust in relationships and the disbelief that anyone will ever actually stay. While I never would have left my past relationships because I was so desperate for them to stay, and honestly, some of them I should have left, I also was able to move on easily after they did because I was always already detached from the relationship to a point. As I've gotten older, I've learned that this has meant I've been unintentionally and unknowingly sabotaging my relationships. I've been the one unable to stay. And this has made it impossible for me to build a successful partnership in my life and have long-term relationships. Now, again, I have been actively working on this through therapy, but I've learned in that work that I will never be rid of C-PTSD or dissociation. They're going to be part of me for the rest of my life. But with the proper awareness and coping tools, I can at least live with them and manage them. This just means I'm always going to be working a little extra to stay present, to remind myself I'm safe now, and consciously change my brain's reactions to life. It's a lot of work, it's tiring work, but it's necessary and it's possible. I say all of this to reiterate that not all disabilities are visible. And you may never know why your coworker forgot every detail from that meeting. You may not know why they appear to be spacing out. And you may not realize someone in your life might be severely sacrificing their needs. So just extend a little bit of patience and empathy because it can go a long way in calming someone's mind. Hopefully sharing my story tonight can help you understand yourself or someone you know a little bit better. And if anyone is struggling, I hope you can see that it's possible to build a full life for yourself, even if it's challenging. Now, I would like to close with a poem that I wrote earlier this year when I realized I was in a safe place and that I was capable of building a life despite all of this. It's a little hopeful piece that I like to close out with anytime I get to share on the mic. And so I just want to say before I get there, thank you so much for listening and for having me. This poem is called When the Map is No Longer Highlighted in Survival. What do I do after surviving a crosswalk I spent 29 years building as I crossed? After the snow has settled, the traffic has calmed, and the sun has waved me across the street, what do I do with these painted hands? They never learned how to hold, just to fold my feelings into my pocket as I helped others across. These concrete feet haven't learned how to beat their crust off, just to fight off the weight of each year. What do I do when the construction is complete? How do I step on an unfamiliar sidewalk instead of sticking around to sit in my handiwork for a while? To admire the elbow grease I pushed for, to allow myself a release into the life I fought for, how do I walk on? How do I know which road to follow when the map is no longer highlighted in survival? I'm learning. They call this a revival. And it's my turn to create the paths I discover. I'm no longer taking cover or being pulled into the cracks, and I'm learning. The hard hat I crafted from my own back never actually fit me, just enough to look protected. I'm learning to remove it, let my head breathe sky again, let my hair feel breeze again. I'm learning to let my feelings unfold, especially the good ones. I'm told their names are relieved, peaceful, fulfilled, alive. I'm learning these feelings will live longer outside of my pocket. I'm learning my crosswalk meant I built a curbside safe enough to take my first step as I begin building a sidewalk all my own, one that can hold the weight of the heavy and the hopeful. Thank you.